You can start off by introducing yourself.
Well, for all those who don't know, my name is Electric Al Boogie.
And where you reside.
I reside in the Bronx, 225th Street in Broadway.
And is that where you first started or got into the hip hop culture?
That's where I first started breakdancing, popping, locking, in the history of hip hop.
And what year was that?
I say back in the early 70s.
Okay. And take us on that journey. Take us through your mindset. What was going on? What was going on in the neighborhoods? The people. What was the culture like? Or because it was formulating then. Take us on that journey and bring us up to speed.
Back in the early age, up in the Bronx, West Side, 225th Street in Broadway, basically a semi-form of the oppression. People without jobs, people in the streets. As my upcoming raised, I was raised very well, to where on the outside it was a struggle. In order to stay away from that struggle, your upbringing had to be, crystal clear. It had to be crisp. People dancing, people uniting together as a family. So where I grew up, all of us pretty much, we all looked out for each other as a family. Where I grew up at, because things were hard back in the day, so we all kind of like looked out for each other. And in that period of time, with the dancing and the culture in the early 70s was pretty much hard. It's a little different from what it is today, much different. Me myself, as a good kid, had a direction of what I wanted to do in life. Go to school, get an education, and not subject myself into the streets. But unfortunately, things happen, through those times, in those years. And the early one, me dancing locally in my own neighborhood, I was a guy that pretty much was just local. My dancing was basically just the heart of dancing, not to be recognized or to look for money for it. It was just the heart of just dancing, period. I met a guy named Loose Bruce, Cut him Loose Bruce, which was a guy that pretty much got me out of the hood and pretty much got me out there, who basically put me out there and to proceed, my dancing. From there, as I was getting older, you get your job, I had jobs, put on to jobs, because the economy was crazy. Then from one thing led to another, decisions had to be made. So I wound up into the drug game. I was in the streets, selling drugs, surviving. What I had to do, take care of my family, because money was hard to come by. My mother had to work 2 jobs, and I didn't want to see her working 2 jobs. So that led me into the streets. As years go by in the streets, you're taking the risk of from the police getting busted. You don't want to do time, and you gotta make sure yourself is pretty much secure. So me and Bruce, we took it to another level. Say, you know what? We need to branch out and take this dancing to another level. Because pretty much we were hustling and dancing at the same time. And then we had formed a crew, which the crew was called the Harlem Pop Lockers. That was one crew. And then we had another crew called the Shack Crew, which we all did for the love. We went to parties, and just crash parties. Our whole Marvel thing to that was just the crash parties. We didn't want to go from here to here to make money. We didn't want to make money because we was already making money. So we didn't have the love to make more money. We just had the love of just dancing. So we took that and branched out and spread our love all over. Wherever party there was a party at, we was there. We was crashing the party. That was back in the late 70s, about to hit the 80s. Along that journey, they were pretty much people that were basically following us everywhere we was going. And I say, in the breakdancing world, education needs to be taught right now. Because a lot of people is misconception about the dancing, the popping, the locking. And it needs to be told.
How does that happen when there are so many people? I mean, I can understand why it has happened, but it doesn't make sense to an outsider when there's so many people that were around, and it's like, well, why would you tell a lie when eventually somebody will come back and get somebody like Al Boogie that can tell you what was going on with no malice, with no ego involved, because they're not trying to be the world's best dancer anymore. He's just taking care of his family now, so he can eventually shine light on the truth. And I'm pretty sure there's 20,000 more Al Boogies out there that can do the same thing. Why do you think that there's a misrepresentation of the education when there's the possibility of that happening?
Because people who need to be around people don't understand themselves. They basically want to take credit for themselves. At the same time, they don't know how to go on by it either. They don't know their education either. So I wouldn't expect them to educate anybody else from that time up to now. If you can't educate nobody, what good are you? Everybody had to learn from somebody. I learned from somebody, the next person learns from somebody, but to understand the art of dancing, where there's someone who else is trying to learn, you have to educate them. You have to. The same way how I learn, I educate. Anybody who danced around me, I educate them. And the people that want to shine and take the credit for it is the ones that are not educated. They're not educated. So basically, I understand why they're doing what they're doing.
Why do you think it's such a problem? You see how you first started off your story and you were telling me, automatically you told me about, the guy Bruce. Why is it so hard for people to admit, like, well, such and such showed me, or such and such helped me, get to the net? Why is that so hard for people to do in the culture? It's like, it's not rocket science. Like, if someone helped you or if you saw someone else do something, that should not be limiting us. But that at this point in time with the street dance culture, that is what's limiting it, because it's as simple as that. Oh, well, I saw such and such did help me. Why is that such a factor?
Two things: fear, and they don't want to lose the reputation that they have. They don't want to lose what they have, because when I say fear can be the person who they supposedly want to teach can be better than them, and then they lose everything what they work for. So they don't want to give credit to the person who inspired them, because then they lose everything. Dancing comes from the heart. It comes from the heart. So when you do something from the heart, you tell it. There's no reason to lie about it. There's no excuse about it. I mean, it's just common sense.
Okay, taking it back to you were telling me about the 70s and going into the 80s. What were some of the names that you were hearing as hip hop was starting to mold and really be called hip hop? What were some of the names in dance that you were hearing that were making noise, such as yourself and Bruce and other people in that 70s and the 80s, when everything was about to explode? What were some of the names that you were hearing?
You're talking about in Like locking and popping?
Everything.
Locking, popping, the wop, the
Everything.
hustle.
And the names of dancers.
Soul Train.
The names of dancers too.
Really nobody. But I heard of Shock-a-Lock. I heard of Shock-a-Lock. I heard of Rocksteady. I was dancing before Rocksteady was Rocksteady. Just me myself being a local humble guy that stayed in the neighborhood, that pretty much, didn't have really a care about who was out there, who was who. The way how I see it, I had to learn from somebody. I learned from Soul Train. Don Camelot, the Lockers, Poppers on Soul Train. Those are the guys who inspired me. So when I branch out, I tell other people. So they can educate themselves. So when they have an issue or they have a problem of dancing or anything, you have to educate them. You tell them, listen, create your own style, don't copycat, don't bite from nobody. Everybody can create their own creativity in any form or fashion. The art of dancing is just the art of dancing. I mean, I don't know how to tell you any clearer than what I'm telling you. It's all messed up right now.
Explain your take on it from the 80s going into the 90s, because now hip hop is on, the music is changing. Are you still dancing? If you are, what's going on as far as you see the dance styles, more dance styles coming out? And if you're not, what are you doing during that time? And are you still keeping in tune to what's going on with the dancing?
Well, I'm keeping in tune. Dancing today pretty much is not being properly taught right. Basically, everybody is basically doing the same type of dance. Nobody is basically creating their own style of dancing. This is how I know it's not being educated right. You have people call themselves the pop masters, the best pop masters in the world. Nah, no such thing. You're not the best because you had to learn from someone else. And if you was the best, you should be educating somebody to inspire them to achieve where they goals, where they have to go. No way. And I'm the one to be told to tell it because I was there. And anybody who came after me and feel that they the best poppers in the world, no way. Because I'll tell them. And it should be told.
Why don't people mention names like yours and others? Because I've interviewed a lot of people, and what I'm trying to say is that when I interview a number of street dancers and people start talking about the same time frames, how do you conveniently leave out people that eventually that you know that I'm going to get to? How does that happen, you think?
Well, you know what, you
understand? It's kind of it's kind of, you can't tell Beauty and the Beast without the Beast.
Well, you have to apply yourself a little more when you're out there. Mm-hmm. People can hear your name, but they actually they really don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to put for yourself, you have to put more of your input in there so people can know who you are.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, there's people there that pretty much
what song you want to start warming up to?
Needs to be educated at the same time.
Mm-hmm. What do you want?
So it's more or less that person has to be out there because they can hear about you, but they want to know you.
And if you had, because a lot of the times now the dancers going around, they teach master classes and things like that. If you had the opportunity to teach a master class, how would it be different from what they're doing right now? Would you even call it a master class? Or would you, what would you do?
No.
If you had the opportunity to teach such a workshop to the youth, the next generation, what would you do? How would it go?
First, I would educate them. And then
One second, go
I would,
do you
at
want-
the same time, I would teach them how it used to be. And at the same time, teach them the basics. And it's up to them to learn on their own. To be creative
Warm up to do. You want to
with
do
their own style, with their own way of dancing. There's no other way that I would do it. I would do it
So,
the way it should be done. And the way it should be done is that if you want to teach somebody, you teach them. Each one teach one. Because if you're not going to teach, what's the sense of teaching if you're not going to teach them right? My way of teaching is basically just educate them and tell them who I learned from. The art of dancing. Where did it come from? Find out where their heart is at in dancing, where their goals is at, how much input do they want to do to dancing,
If they want to make it their
Right.
career for real.
Right. Whatever their mind is at, whatever their goals is at, and you find out where they're good at, where their heart is at, and then basically the person will learn on their own.
Mm-hmm.
The same way I did. I didn't have to copy from nobody. You create your own style of dancing.
I think that's one of the biggest solutions. I've even heard my father say it a number of times and offer that advice to people, to tell other people, just create your own thing, because right now the biggest gripe is, oh, you're not doing this and that right, you're doing this, and they're just calling out the styles. I don't want to call out the styles because that's irrelevant, but what they're calling out are just moments in time. If you think about it, that's okay, that's that style for that time period. No one's calling out the new thing, you understand? Nobody's calling the new thing. They're more so fads because they're not embraced properly. Like you'll see things like the jerk, or just other different things like fad dances. That's what we call them, fad dances. But no one, and even those aren't as original as they can be. But no one's calling out, oh, I'm doing, let's say, I'm doing the new finger twirling. You know how they're saying, oh, you're doing locking, or you're doing. Nobody's making the new popping, the new locking. Nobody's doing that. And the information that you're saying, and along with a whole bunch of other people, but I don't know why it's not catching on, is to stay away from all of that stuff. Just create your own lane, create your own thing. But that's easier said than done. What do you say to the people that do want to do that, but they run into the roadblocks of others and say, well, no, we're not going to accept that? How do you help them combat those types of people that don't want to usher in the new? No, we want to keep it this way. How do you get around those people?
Well, then they never going to achieve where they want to go. They'll never get to where they really should need to go. Because when you ignore people, especially when people is educating you, when you ignore that, then you're not trying to do anything for yourself. What are you trying to accomplish with that? Is what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. Where do you go from there? Because you know what? You're always gonna come back and try to find out why you're here or why you're doing it anyway. Mm-hmm. See, that's why I say education is so important, because you get your mind right where it's you get adjusted to where, you know what, this is what I can do. I don't need to go back to this person, or I don't need to do this, because you don't got yourself educated. So you misconcept everything of what you want to do or what you decide to do at that moment. There's no other way of saying it. Me myself, if I was able to help, people that need to be educated right, that's what I would do. That's what I would do.
How do you help someone become an individual? A free spirit, a mind with no fear. Don't worry about what anybody thinks. How do you help them become an individual? Because I think that if you can help them become an individual, then you would have more empowerment within the dance game, and the more empowerment, then the more education will come, because they will be empowered to be educated and be empowered to give that education back down to somebody else.
Well, I make them feel good about themselves. That's the first thing. I will, say that you probably have more to give than the next person who taught you.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
That's
So,
that answer right there.
Yeah.
That's what it is. Meaning that you have to say that, yeah, even though such and such man showed that you better than them, and don't be afraid, or don't be. You might be better than your teacher.
You have to, basically inspire them. Say, you know what, you can be better than me.
Mm-hmm.
Most cases, you will be better than me.
Mm-hmm.
That's the attitude that you have to have. That you will be better than the person that taught you. And make them feel confident about themselves. Because if you don't have no confidence, then you're always going to be on that road looking for answers.
Mm-hmm.
Asking questions and looking for the right answer. And you'll never get it because you're not feeling good about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You have to feel good about yourself. You have to have that power when you get on that dance floor that I am good. I am that person that can do better. I don't need to be misconceived about somebody telling me what I can or what I cannot do. Let's go along with the education. And it's a powerful thing. And once everybody follows that road and understand what it's all about dancing, then you won't have these problems.
Okay. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Is there any closing remarks you would like to make? Anybody you want to thank for helping you on your journey? Anything like that?
Well, first and foremost, I would like to thank Bruce. Because if it wasn't for Bruce, I probably wouldn't be sitting here talking to you today. I'd like to give another shout out to a good friend that I always have a friend forever. He's Chocolat. Because he's a real dude. And real people do real things.